All right. Well, welcome everyone to our session, our live session, and we are going to go over our very last deliverable, which was deliverable 7. And so this is the one that's the comprehensive one, so it's a lot involved. So hopefully you are reviewing this archive before the last week of the course so that you can get a jump start on it, because this one is more heavily weighted and it's going to take a little bit of time for you to complete. So just make sure that you are allowing yourself enough time. Remember, when you submit, it takes, you have to give at least 2 days to get your grades and your feedback. And so if there's something that you need to fix, you want to make sure that you have enough time to fix it and get it in before the end of the course, so that you can, have time to correct that. Because once the end of the course happens, it is the end of the course. And there's no more resubmitting after that. Okay? So this is it. We are deliverable 7. This is what we need to do. And so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this up in the course as well so that we can explore some things if we need to. And so let me pull this up. But we are still in our scenario where you are in human resources, of course. This is still an authentic approach to your deliverable and assessment. If you see me looking to the side, it's because I have a second screen, and so I'm opening up the course and my other screen, so I'm not looking at the camera. So I just want to kind of get to the deliverable. While I have the guidance, sometimes I like to check still, because sometimes things change between the last time that we teach. This one, that there's nothing being missed. So I'm just going to pull it up. Pull this up and then we'll go back to my sheet. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull this over. And so I have the course open. Are you seeing the course on your screen? Or it looks to be the course, Tom?
No, I still see deliverable 7, the Word doc.
Really? Okay, I have it over. Are you still seeing the Word document? Okay.
Something happened and then it went back to the Word doc. Did you move it again?
I haven't done anything. And I have it on the screen. Okay, so let me stop sharing really quickly and start sharing again, and that should fix it. I apologize about that. I don't know why it was doing that. Okay, tell me if you're able to see it now.
Yes.
Yay, okay, I probably just needed to stop sharing and refresh. Okay, so as you can see here, this deliverable, the purpose of it is to assess your learning and understanding as it relates to all of the competencies within the course. So you'll see all of the main kind of competencies here. And so this deliverable is going to be comprehensive, and it's going to cover all of them. And so the scenario is that you have been hired as the new vice president of human resources for your organization. And one of the areas in which you need to familiarize yourself with is how well or not the organization manages and prevents risk. Now, I know that we've gone over risk earlier on, so you'll find that you'll be pulling together a lot of things that you've kind of gone over before, but it's comprehensive, so it shouldn't be really any new information introduced in this deliverable. So upon review, you realize that there is no comprehensive policy for risk prevention and management that's currently in place. You report your findings to the CEO, who agrees that this lack of a documented policy must be corrected right away. And the CEO has instructed you to develop a policy document to protect your organization and its employees from risk. And so as part of your role as the VP of HR, you'll need to research your organization and note that it is publicly traded. So right there, I want to explain, because sometimes people get confused This is the scenario, sure. You can, since for the other sections of the course, you've been kind of creating your own organization and using a fictitious organization, and you can absolutely do that here, okay? So you don't have to really go out and research a publicly traded organization. It does not say to do that anywhere here. I think this is just kind of going along with the scenario to let you know it's a kind of a big company. And so risk, I think it's there to let you know that risk is a big deal. So it's kind of a hint. So, I mean, you can go and certainly use a real organization, sure, as long as you'll be able to kind of find the components that you need. But you might find it easier just to kind of make up your own. This being publicly traded, the note here is a note so that you can kind of really think through the risk areas and the amount of risk to all of the stakeholders. Because if it's publicly traded, that means you're selling your stock, right? And so if I buy stock in your organization, or people who own stock, they are now stakeholders, and any decision that you make can really impact them. So that's what that's there for. And so here are the instructions. So you're going to prepare a policy. So it's as formal as a document. And in that policy, you're going to outline standards for employee safety and security. You're going to design measures for reasonable accommodation. You're going to designate critical components that must be addressed to assure business continuity in the event of disaster. Describe how management decisions must align to ethical values in the organization. You're going to illustrate the impact of labor laws that we learned and unions. And you're going to incorporate a human resources audit. And again, you're going to have sources for this. A lot of this may sound familiar, and it should, right? Because you should have done most of this at some point in your deliverable. So let's go through it. And I will hint to you what you can bring in. Now, there'll be sections of this where you will already have done this, and it's okay to use those. I'm not going to make you rewrite something completely different. You do not have to do that. You do not have to recreate the wheel. And I will let you know which sections, based on all of your deliverables and my guidance, that would apply. But I'll also let you know sections that won't apply, because some of this you will have to create. So take note from where I say you can use information, because sometimes what happens is that students will get that they can use it from the other ones, and they put all that information here, and some of it is not relevant, and they've missed some key areas that they need. So just follow my guidance. I promise you, I've gone through this with a fine-tooth comb, and I'll let you know where you would have done this before. And if I didn't say you could take information, that means you really didn't do it to the degree that you need to for this assignment and any other deliverable, so it won't apply. You need to kind of create that. So the first one is an introduction based on a scenario, right? You should provide an introduction to the company you are presenting on. What's the name of the company? What does the company do? What products or services does the company promote? You could take this from Deliverable 1. Now, it won't be in a PowerPoint, but you have the note sections, right? So you can take this introduction from Deliverable 1. Got it? Now, the trick here is that you've done other organizations for your other deliverables. So once you pick and choose an organization, you got to stay with it for the rest of this. And so you might decide, well, while I did all of this for Deliverable 1, looking at some of the heavier sections of Deliverable 7, it may make more sense to use the company that I did for accommodations, or a company that we did for this one, because, that one has more work and I've already fleshed that out, versus Deliverable 1, I can make up a new, name of company, blah, 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 based on the scenarios from some of the other deliverables, and kind of make that my own. But that's your choice. But I will tell you that you did do all of this in Deliverable 1, so it's up to you whether you want to use that or not. The second thing that you need to do is outline standards for employee safety and security. Let me do this, okay? So you need to describe the policies and rules that will help to provide a safe environment for all employee groups of the company. So you got to describe policies and rules that will help you to provide a safe environment for all employee groups of the company. We talked about these in weeks 1 and 2. So go to the archive where I said OSHA, where I say employee safety. If you forgot, that's where you will find this information. Also, I want you to pull in OSHA standards somewhere, okay? So also think about OSHA standards, such as, and I'm giving you some hints to go with this, such as maintaining records of injuries and death due to workplace accidents. That's an OSHA standard. That's a policy that you can use, and a rule to help ensure a safe environment, right? It's not comprehensive. I went over a lot more in the live session, but if you have some notes, you can certainly use them. So, think about maybe another one is submitting on-site inspections when notified, submitting 2 on-site inspections when notified, right? So just remember to describe the rules and policies that will help to provide a safe environment for the employees. So you want to go into depth with that, and OSHA gives you some good ones to go by. Also remember when doing this section that the HR department has responsibility for ensuring the health and safety of employees. And that's what this is about. You are the HR VP, right? So human resources management, here's a hint. I only put things here for hints. They work closely with other departments and maintain, and I highlighted, health and safety records, along with managing safety training training programs. So there are hints throughout all of this to guide you. I even gave you, here's an example of a policy standard for how it will sound. And so I put an example of just one of them, right? XYZ company will provide personal protective equipment needed to perform the job at no cost to employees. This is to ensure the safety and well-being of our employees. That is one policy. So you just got to come up with some policies to ensure the safety and security. And I gave you even an example of how a policy would read relating to this. Any questions before I go to the next section? Pretty easy? Okay. I lost my little menu here, so I'm kind of trying to click on it. I don't know where it disappeared to. I'm just going to keep going. All right, section 3. And again, take your time with this. This is not going to be a one and done. You want to, probably take a few days to do Deliverable 7. You need to design measures for reasonable accommodation. So, the first thing you're going to do for this section, and make sure you put your section headers to guide you, right? Discuss the accommodations that the company considers reasonable to accommodate employees with disabilities. Okay, so remember to have this flow with your description of what the company does above. So you can't say, this company is an ice cream parlor, right? And then when you get to the reasonable accommodation section, say, a reasonable accommodation would be, having moving golf carts to travel around the building. Well, how do you do that in an ice cream parlor that you just mentioned? Would that be reasonable for an ice cream parlor? So just make sure it's making sense. Just make sure it's making sense. So I put, if there is an ice cream shop, then maybe instead of having a golf cart to go around the grounds of the building, because I don't think you go around the grounds of the building where you're serving ice cream, but maybe having wheelchair accessible materials or lower counters, so that someone can do. So that's an example of something that would match. For your reasonable accommodations, and I know this is a review, make sure that you include activities or modifications to the work environment that allow the qualified individual to perform the work. So you're going to have to think through some of this, right? It has to make sense. So you want to make sure that the modifications will allow the person to perform the work. So you have to kind of describe that here, based on the job. And so they may be related to the size and financial position of the company. So for example, a small business may not be required to make expensive structural modifications, such as installing an elevator, but could be required of a large business. So remember, I gave you a hint above to say this is a publicly traded company. That's a good indicator that this is not a small mom and pop. Okay. So examples of modifications may include the purchase of like lifts or ramps, or maybe modified work schedules, or reassignment to a vacant position, maybe some modifications to the training, leave of absence, hiring readers or interpreters, or widening door frames and installing rails. I just put generally these accommodations, though, as a reminder, must be requested by the employee. So you're going to discuss these in detail. I gave you some information. I want you to remember, though, depending on what you put, that you don't have to undertake reasonable accommodation if doing so will cause the company undue hardship. Okay? Meaning it will require significant difficulty or expense or significantly alter the nature of the operation of the business. So you might say, and you can pull some of this from your other deliverable, but you could just say, as a company, we want to make sure that we are hiring everyone. We are an equal opportunity employer, and understand that some of our employees have disabilities or will have disabilities. We are prepared to make reasonable accommodations as needed to support employees with disabilities under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Because our company is, and it tells you above, right, kind of, a little bit, but based on what you put here, because we are this, these are the accommodations that we are prepared to offer to employees based on need, and then you'll talk about those. Section 4. Now you have to designate critical components that must be addressed to assure business continuity in the event of a disaster. We should be able to do this really easily at this point. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my bar back. That's why I moved this. I don't understand. You should be able to do this really easily because we just talked about this, right? And it's from Deliverable 6. So I put, you can take information that you included in Deliverable 6. Yes, you can plop it right here, as long as it flows and it makes sense. So your disaster recovery plan. So provide the procedures that you included in Deliverable 6, okay? Again, critical components that must be addressed to assure business continuity in the event of disaster. So take your procedures from Deliverable 6. Also, you want to include the business, right, the areas of the business that are focused on that the business will continue or can continue in case of a disaster. So I put a hint here. Remember the scope from Deliverable 7. So do Deliverable 6, I'm sorry. So make sure you put your time into Deliverable 6. Why are these areas important? So if you put it from Deliverable 6, the scope, just make sure you include the why. These are important. And you may have already done that in Deliverable 6. Then you're going to describe your plan. Discuss the step-by-step procedures that are to take place in order if a disaster occurs. You should have done this in Deliverable 6. So again, remember the procedures based on the specific disaster that you discussed in your scope. So you can plop that right there. What are the tasks? What are the structured step-by-step activities that are to take place? So most of this section should be already written for you if you do a good job with Deliverable 6. I will tell you, if there are areas that need improvement in any of the areas that you are planning to include in this deliverable that you did not fix, I will probably think twice about just plopping them in here without making the changes based on the feedback. Okay? So for deliverable 6, if there's something that says, hey, you didn't really define the scope and you didn't discuss the rationale for why you put that, and you don't make changes and you put it here, you're going to get the same score for this section. Make sense? So far, any questions? Okay. Here's a section that you did not do before. So here's where you start to get to some new things that you have to add. Section 5, you need to describe how management decisions must align to the ethical values of the organization. I want you to first start out by discussing why ethics are important within the company. Okay? So as a CEO, and this is a policy, think about how your policies are written in your company. If you have a manual of sorts, and there's a new section, right, on ethics, they're not just going to start saying, you know, here are the management decisions that align to the values. They're going to open it up by really stressing to their employees why it's important that that company operates with ethics in mind and that they operate with integrity, right? They usually have like a whole paragraph or two, and then they get to the meat of it. So you want to start by discussing why ethics are important within the company. Next, I want you to discuss the importance of managers making decisions that align with company code of ethics and why it's important for managers to uphold integrity when making decisions. So I want you to write these things down, these 3 things down, because this is exactly, I'm going to go for A, B, and C. I need all 3 of these things in this section in order to meet this section. So first, I need you to discuss why ethics are important within the company. Second, from there, you are going to discuss the importance of managers within your company making decisions that align with the company code of ethics. And why it's important for managers to uphold integrity when making decisions. So what that looks like is, ethics are important. It is really important that we operate in an ethical environment because of blah, blah, blah. When you keep ethics at the forefront, blah, blah, blah. This is what happens when you keep ethics at the forefront, and we are a company that will operate according to integrity. And then you go into, it is really important that the managers and leaders within our company are making decisions that align with our code of ethics. And it is important for managers to uphold integrity when making decisions. Here's why it's important, right, for managers to make decisions that align with our code of ethics. And here's why it's important that they uphold integrity, because of X, Y, and Z. And then the next section, you're going to include the consequences of not upholding company ethics. So this will almost be the 3rd paragraph. So this is paragraph 1. This is paragraph 2. This is paragraph 3 within this section. Got it? Because if I am looking at this rubric, you don't want to miss these 3. I would have these as 3 separate sections in order to meet this, because it says it's well written, using clear examples, describing how decisions must align to ethical values, describing ethical values. So I'm looking at this rubric. So you don't want to miss any of these things, these 3 things. You need all 3 to hit it. Okay. Section 5. And this was I told you this is a long one. I got the rubric on one screen and I have this on the other. So I'm looking at them as I'm describing this to you. Okay, so now, section 6, you have to illustrate the impact of labor laws and unions. It may seem simple in this one statement, Here's how you get there. So write all of this down. So the first thing you need to do is discuss Title VII Civil Rights Act of 1964. So what you're going to do is discuss what it is. This Title VII, what is Title VII? Why does it exist and who does it protect? All three of those. What is Title VII? Why does it exist? Who does it protect? What are the protected classes? Make sure you include that. What are the protected classes? Which you cannot discuss Title VII and not discuss all of the protected classes in. If you don't put all of the protected classes, then you're really not discussing Title VII. You can't really give a definition of it without including that. You need to discuss what does this mean for employees or employers. So, for example, Title VII, this is why it exists. This is who it protects: race, gender. It's race, gender, religion, and age only after 40. National origin, right? So, what does this mean for employees and employers? I want you to put that into your own words. I talked about it. So, what does this mean? And then you need to discuss bona fide occupational qualification as an exception. You have that? Because that's not in the instructions or the rubric. It's not in the instructions, I'm sorry. But it's part of meeting this for the rubric. So it's not spelled out. So I want you to make sure that you write these down. So I want you to discuss bona fide occupational qualification as an exception. Step B, I want you to discuss the Equal Opportunity Employment Act. That's different. So that's a different law. I'm giving you right here, I'm actually giving you what you need. You're illustrating the impact of labor laws and unions. And so in my grading, I'm giving you all of the important ones that you need to discuss here and nothing more. So Title VII, why does it exist? Who does it protect? What it means for employees and what it means for employers. What is bona fide occupational qualification as an exception? What does that mean? How is this an exception? Right? Then you got to discuss EEOC. If you forget to discuss EEOC, you would not have met this requirement because it is a very important labor law. It's like besides Title VII, it is the other main one. And so what does this mean for a company and employees? Same here. Then the rest, if you take your time here, you can pull the rest from your other deliverables. So what are the labor unions and why do people join them? Just copy and paste that from Deliverable 2. You should have that. Discuss the benefits of unions for employees. How do they help employees? You could take this right from Deliverable 2. So A and B, you're going to take your time and discuss that and write that out yourself. C and D, copy and paste from your Deliverable 2. I probably shouldn't be saying that on the tape, to copy and paste from another deliverable. Think about it. But my goal is, I don't want to make this overly complicated. It's already kind of long, right? So my thing is kind of want you to know or remember, in case you don't remember, where you can pull things from to make it easier. Why rewrite it if you already have it? So, okay, so this is what we've never done. It says to incorporate a human resources audit. We've never done, we haven't even talked about an audit, and you have not done this yet in class. So I'm just going to review what it is, and then I'll tell you how to go about it. Okay, so we don't have to make it too complicated. So basically, a human resources audit involves devoting the resources and taking the time to really intensely and objectively look into the company's practices. So something for your audit you're going to need to focus on are the practices of the company, right? Their HR policies, strategies and procedures to protect the company, and identify opportunities for improvement if there are some, and to establish best practices. That's what it is. And so in I, if you copy everything from Roman numeral lowercase I, you'll have it. So basically, just include company's policies, processes, with the focus on key HR department areas. So you can focus on recruiting, both internal and external. So let's break this down. So if you're doing an audit, if I'm an auditor and I'm looking into your HR practices, number one, think about it. I'm going to look at, first of all, what are your policies, your HR policies? Because the reason being is if I'm an auditor, maybe I'm auditing because something went wrong. Remember we were talking about, we did our case studies about the reprimanding and if it was fair and if it aligned with your policies. What if an employee sued and part of this suing is this audit? So I need to first understand what your HR policies are. You don't have to write them out per se, but we're going to talk about, you're going to have a questionnaire, right? So you're going to understand what their policies are and their processes. Do they have a code of ethics? You're going to focus on recruiting, both internal and external, because you want to make sure that everything is fair. Do they recruit based on the qualifications? This is going into, remember the laws that we were talking about for recruiting. You should have those policies and qualifications written in the job description, and you recruit based on that, regardless of it's a disability or not. If they have the skills and qualifications based on how you outlined it, then you recruit objectively, both internally and externally. You're going to look at how they compensate. Make sure compensation is fair, right? You're going to look at employee retention. You're going to look at benefits, performance management. Remember, performance management are the appraisals and the reviews and how they do them, and training and development. So what I want you to do is screenshot or copy and paste this right here so that you can include all of those areas on your questionnaire. So now that you have that, you are going to create a questionnaire that asks for the evaluation of the areas mentioned above. Questionnaire that asks for an evaluation of the areas mentioned above. And make sure to fill out the questionnaire and include comments at the bottom. So let me see if I have an example.
Okay, so here's an example that I typed out. So for example, here's the criteria, right? The organization provides equal pay to all employees. Now I gave remember, I'm the auditor, right? And so I gave a score of 2 out of 5. You can put it any way you want. You can put 2 out of 5, 2/5. If you have little bubbles, right? That has numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can put a 2 that way. I recommend a scale of 1 to 5, no more than that, because then it's more work for you. It gets a little trickier. But the most important part to this, you want to have the criteria clearly lined out, clearly spelled out, but the auditor notes, it's critical. Okay, the auditor note's critical. This is an audit. You are the auditor, right? You don't work for the organization. You're in to audit the organization. So your notes as to why you gave the score that you gave is really important. And you have to put notes on what you've observed. And most audits will have detailed notes. A lot of students, this is the area where, for Deliverable 7, where they get tripped up a little bit and they don't get all their scores, and just want to make sure, since it is the last deliverable, depending on when you submit, that you have this section. This section is the audit, so the notes are critical. Don't skimp on them. You want to make sure that you are detailed with them. I didn't fill out a questionnaire form. My example is I put the criteria in bold and I put my notes and then I put my score. You don't have to be fancy, but if you want to be, that's fine. Do not just put a simple screenshot and picture of some, questions and bubbles that you put. That's gonna give you a 1. What we want is, for you to demonstrate that you are able to apply the information. So if you look here at my notes, I gave a 2 for equal pay, and I put this organization has room for improvement with compensation. The audit revealed huge disparities among salaries of similar roles. Leadership was not able to provide evidence, documentation, or sound rationale for the salary differences. The recommendation is for a more in-depth audit and review of the organization's hiring practices, specifically compensation, a full market review of compensation based on similar roles within the industry. So you see this is detailed. So for each one for your audit, I mean, this is the summative. It's worth almost 30% of the grade. It's 28%, right? So we're going to be looking for these auditor notes. 1 or 2 sentences for each criteria may not be enough. You want to just provide some detailed notes about what you found, what you saw, complete sentences, very professional. Remember, you're the auditor. You do not work for the organization. You're auditing. And so your report, you want to make sure that your report is comprehensive. And the only way for your report to be comprehensive is for you to provide detailed notes. So your criteria, your score, and then detailed commentary and notes. I can't stress enough, detailed commentary and notes. I'm going to say it like 3 more times. Detailed commentary and notes after each criteria, detailed commentary and notes. So if I were doing criteria 2, for example, I would put criteria 2. I want to make sure that it's clear. This is the criteria, so I'm going to bold my title or topic, and then I'll put, I don't know, I'm going to make something up. The grass was extremely green in the garden, right? I'm going to give that 4 out of 5. And then I'm going to put each criteria, I have to have my auditor notes explaining what I saw, what we found, and recommendation. So, and this has nothing to do with the assignment, but I'm just giving an example. I'm going to put the property. It was evident upon review that the property owner took really good care of the lawn and grass. It appeared that the grass was regularly watered. That's my spelling is wrong. Regularly watered and provided nutrients. I'm rambling. Nutrients throughout the spring and summer. There was no evidence of grubs or weeds, which indicates that the lawn was properly cared for. Our recommendations, and I don't say my because this is a professional document, right? So you want to make sure that you're not talking in using personalized pronouns or anything like that. Recommendation, so I could just put something like the recommendation moving forward is to continue with regular watering. However, quality of the grass can also be improved by integrating grass food. Nothing about I am the worst gardener, but you see how it's detailed. I gave my recommendation. I didn't give a 5 out of 5, so there's something lacking, right? And just gave my recommendation. So you just want to make sure that you have your criteria spelled out. You want to give it a score, and you want to have your auditor notes. And your auditor notes need to make sense based on the criteria, and you want them to have depth and detail. So that's the example for the audit. So hopefully that's clear to you. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. Please just make sure that you do not save this it takes 2 days, right? But the exception is the last day of the course. So if you submit this like on a Thursday, I mean, the course ends on a Friday, you're not going to get this back in time for you to do anything about it. Okay, so the exception is the last, day of the course. You just want to make sure that you're submitting in enough time so that you can get your feedback back and enough time for you to resubmit if you need to.
I'm sorry. So the one question I have is, I think you already answered it. I think you just answered, and I just didn't hear it. I did not hear it. So the you just answer it. I'm writing the questionnaire. Yeah, I'm writing the questionnaire as the auditor, or I'm sorry, I'm writing the feedback as the auditor, but I'm adding the comment as the VP of HR.
Yeah, I mean, because you can't fill out an audit without an audit form. So, somebody has to create it. And because it's specific to these areas, is HR, you want to include it. So you just need a question. It doesn't have to be fancy. You can ask open-ended questions, right? But you're evaluating. So, if it were me, I would think of it as a scale. If I were doing it, I would do it with a scale, right? But you have to make sure that these topic areas are covered. So you could just say something like the company's policies and processes that relate to HR are well defined, communicated and spelled out. And, you could have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 being high or whatever, however you want to design it, right? And then you can create things, but as long as you are covering these areas, because I'm going to be looking at your statements, right? Not so much I don't care how the company ranked, honestly. I'm going to be looking at what you include for the evaluation areas. And since it's an audit, most times they have some kind of commentary, so you can put some commentary at the bottom or feedback, so you don't have to be spending so much time. So you just want to incorporate the audit. So you want to include this in section I, and make sure you do B for this section. And I'm okay with you using a template. What I'm not okay with is if you do use a template as your baseline, using their questions. You need to create your own questions, okay? And then just make sure you have, all of your sources, because a lot of these areas, like you're going to have some research, like why are ethics important, things like that, ramifications of not upholding ethics, those types of things. You need resources for. Now, I will be doing a session on ethics. You will have, some things on ethics, so I'll be talking about those as we go along in the course. It's just that Deliverable 7, of course, we have 11 weeks in the course. Deliverable 7 came before that topic. So you'll have some guidance on this. But I don't talk about audits at all. So I wanted to make sure that I spent time going through that piece of it. Any other question? That was a really good question, though, because someone else may have had the same question. No other questions? Okay. Well, I'm around if you need me. There's still, plenty of time to kind of get this one done anyway. But as you see, you might want to kind of do the other ones and have the scores that you want in certain areas before approaching Deliverable 7. Though, the beauty of this kind of course, being competency-based, you can skip around and do deliverables when you see fit or, desire. But given some of the recycled information, if it were me, I would probably do the other ones and make sure I got the scores and the feedback I needed before approaching it. But, do whatever works best for you. I don't want to discourage you. Some people try Deliverable 7 as the first deliverable, which, I don't know how I feel about the strategy. Sometimes I think it's either genius or not, but some people, they do it. And I think if you do it, if it's genius and you do this and you get it well, the beautiful thing about it is if you start with Deliverable 7 for this course first, you've kind of done your homework for all the other deliverables. And so in that regard, it's genius. When it's not genius is when they do it and it's like a disaster, right? And sometimes I'm like, oh man, you wasted a lot of time on that. You might want to go back and do some other things. But the people that do this first and they do it right, they take a backwards approach to it, because a lot of times the Deliverable 7 is a compilation of sorts with some other things added in. They knock out the big one, and then the other one is like, it's easy. It's easier. So I'm not mad at that strategy. My brain thinks very kind of linear. I have to do step 1, or I do step 2, then I got to do step 3, then I got to do step 4. But there's some people that like to work backwards. So whatever floats your boat. But if you do have any questions regarding any of this, feel free to reach out to me. Okay, well, that's all for this one. I'm going to stop the recording. And for those listening in, have a great rest of your week. Stop.